Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be discussing the draft final proposal and draft tariff language related to the 2021 Contract Management Enhancements Initiative. My name is Isabella Nicosia, representing ISO Stakeholder Affairs, and I'll be facilitating the web conference today. I'm also joined on the line by Jason Foster, our lead queue management specialist from Infrastructure Contracts and Management, as well as Deb Levine, our Director of Infrastructure Contracts and Management. And then we also have Bill Weaver, our Senior Counsel, on the line. The presentation, as well as the draft final proposal and draft tariff language, have been posted out on the initiative webpage. So to navigate to that page, you can go www.kaiso.com, and then under the Stay Informed tab, you'll want to click the Stakeholder Initiatives page, and then it'll be listed there on that page. Again, it's the Contract Management Enhancements Initiative, and you'll find it out there. So a few housekeeping reminders before we get started. Today's call is being recorded. The recording is for informational and convenience purposes only, and any related transcription should not be reprinted without the ISO's permission. Today's meeting is structured to stimulate dialogue and engage different perspectives, and while we always welcome comments and feedback, please just remember to keep those professional and respectful, and then try and be brief and refrain from repeating what has already been said so that we can manage the time during today's meeting efficiently and address as many comments and questions as possible. So we will be taking questions throughout the call today. Our plan is to stop after each section or subsection. If you would like to enter the verbal queue and you connected to audio through your computer or use the Call Me option, then you'll need to select the raise hand icon, which is located just on the right-hand side above the chat window. If you connected to audio separately and not through the WebEx, then you'll need to press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the verbal queue. And we'll remind you of those instructions when it's time for questions. If you do need any technical assistance during today's meeting, you can send a chat to the event producer. Today's event producer is Michelle. And then you can also send a question in the chat to me, or you can send it to all panelists. Again, my name is Isabella Nicosia, and just either for verbal questions, or if you choose to enter your question through the chat, please just remember to state your name and affiliation before making your comment. So the agenda for today, we're going to start with the welcome and introduction, and then go into our 4 separate topics. So we have Kaiso as an affected system study agreement, some sub-items related to retirement and repower, as well as modification adjustments, and then also the generator interconnection study process agreement effective date. And then we'll wrap up with some next steps. And just a couple notes, since our last call and previous paper, we did remove the market quality proposal from this initiative. And then also the Kaiso has kicked off the 2021 IPE initiative. So we posted a preliminary issue paper last week, and we will hold a public stakeholder workshop on October 19th to discuss that issue paper. So this slide here just shows where we are currently at in the policy initiative stakeholder process. So we're here in proposal development at draft final proposal and draft tariff. And then we have our proposed initiative schedule here. So we're here at the October 7th stakeholder meeting. We will be taking comments by October 21st. I encourage you to submit your comments on both the draft final proposal and draft tariff. The comment template is available out on the webpage for you now, so you can go in and submit your comments anytime between now and the 21st. And then for final proposal, we're targeting November 10th to post that, and then hold a stakeholder call on November 17th. And then still targeting a February 2022 Board of Governors meeting, and then hopefully implementing by 2022 or 2023 if necessary.
Hey, Isabella, this is Jason. Sorry to jump in. Can we go back? Yeah, we're actually intending to proceed to the December 2021 Board of Governors meeting with a FERC filing following that Board of Governors meeting in December of 2021, which would put us in a February FERC order timeline. I'm not sure how that didn't get updated, but just want to clarify that.
Thanks, Jason, and we'll update this on the slide and get that reposted so that you have the most current and accurate information.
Thank you.
So with that, I will hand it over to Jason and we'll get started with our first topic.
All right. Isabella, Michelle, thank you both for hosting us today. I appreciate it. Yeah, like Isabella said, I will present, there's 2 slides per topic, so I'll go ahead and walk through each of the slides for each of the topics, and then we'll pause for comments or questions on each. So the first topic we have today is the Kaiso as an Affected Systems Study Agreement. A bit of background here. The Kaiso, as more and more projects are being proposed both within the Kaiso controlled grid and as well as neighboring balancing authorities, the Kaiso is becoming more impacted by those additional projects and generation being developed. And it's important that the Kaiso review those proposed interconnections to ensure that there's no impacts or effects to the Kaiso controlled grid from a reliability standpoint. And so the original proposal was intended to simply implement the Kaiso as an Affected System Study Agreement and provide a structure for the study itself, but as well as identifying, the deposit that's required, as well as kind of the process that we will undertake as far as that affected system study goes. Stakeholder comments that we received from a number of folks weren't opposed to it. In fact, I think a number of people support it. A number of stakeholders, mostly on the customer developer side of the house, asked Kaiso to consider reimbursing for network upgrades that are developed in the Kaiso controlled grid as a result of the affected system study. And the Kaiso really wants to just reiterate here that the intent of the Kaiso as an affected system agreement in this initiative was to get the agreement into place. And we don't deem it really appropriate, I guess, if you will, to determine financial or reimbursement issues in this initiative, but we do encourage stakeholders to request that the reimbursement topic be considered in the IPE proposal or IPE initiative that was recently initiated. Specific to tariff language updates, we are proposing to add a section 14.5, which includes a subsection of 14.5.1, as well as implement the Kaiso as an affected system study agreement that's identified in the draft final proposal paper. And I'll pause there for any questions.
Do you have any questions, Michelle?
I do not see any questions in the queue.
All right, great. We'll keep going. So on the retirement and repower processes, there's a few topics here. The first being the retention of interconnection service consistent with the retention of deliverability when a generator announces retirement and what their rights are relative to the retention of the interconnection service and deliverability. So currently the deliverability retention rights are for 3 years as described in the reliability requirements, BPM, and some further details in the BPM for generator management. SCE and Vistra have provided their support for the proposal, and LSA and SIA and 6 cities asked for clarification on when the 3-year retention starts and some rationale behind, why is it 3 year? Why is it deemed to be a 3-year period? So just to provide some clarification on those, the 3-year time frame really allows enough time for projects to develop their project, really, in a simple way to say it, right? There's permits that are required, equipment that needs to be procured, financing that needs to be procured. There's oftentimes study process that must be completed within, and then construction must start for any repower project within that 3-year period. And so the Kaiso deems that 3-year period to be sufficient at this point. And then just to clarify, again, the reliability requirements, BPM and then the generator management BPM will help identify some of the time in which, or the requirements for which the retention period begins and would then terminate, if you will. Just to clarify here, there is actually no tariff language that would be updated, and we'll be updating the BPM language through the BPM change management process following this initiative. So probably likely early next year, we'll introduce this into the BPM changes. I'll pause there for any questions. I see Susan has raised her hand.
Yep, I do see a question in queue. So, Susan, go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Hi, Susan Schneider, Phoenix Consulting. I just had a clarification question about the beginning construction. I think the language is be actively engaged in, I've forgotten exactly what's after that, but I don't think does the construction actually have to physically have started? It seems like there's you could be actively engaged, and let's say if you're in cluster 14 and the study process is going to take a long time, or you haven't actually started construction but you sign your GIA, and it just seems like that. I think that that may overstate it just a little the way I understand the requirement.
Yeah, so I can clarify that just a bit, right? A project can do or take a number of actions, if you will, to retain its deliverability and now interconnection service. One of those actions is enter the Q cluster study process within that 3-year period. And if the project or customer generating facility enters the Q cluster study process, they have kind of checked the box, if you will, for retaining that. If that interconnection request is withdrawn, and it's beyond that 3-year period, then the generating facility has effectively forfeited, if you will, or lost their deliverability and interconnection service rights.
Right, and this says and begin construction, not and or something like that. It's you don't physically have to have started construction yet, right?
So yeah, when it comes to going through the repower process specifically, so Section 25 of the tariff, when a project is seeking to repower and go through the repower study process, the terminology is be actively engaged in construction at the 3-year period. So that means that the repower interconnection request and study process would need to be completed, and then the construction activities must be started. And Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that includes the decommissioning and removal of existing facilities as well.
Yeah, this is Deb. In essence, shovels need to be in the ground is what that means. So it can't be that you've executed the contract and you're sitting there not doing anything. You actually have to have shovels in the ground and construction has begun. Okay,
because that sometimes can take a little while, and the study plan can take a while, as we've discussed in some of the other items. So if you mean shovels in the ground, and you're going to be doing some clarifying anyway in the BPM, and there's a different standard for repowering versus entering the queue, it might be good to put those clarifications in as well in the BPM changes.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll consider that as we go through that process. If you have specific suggestions, we'd like to hear them, in our consideration of adding that clarifying language. So we appreciate your feedback on it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we are moving to the next question in the queue. Caller, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi Dan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Hi, this is Dan McCarran, SDG&E. Just looking for a little clarification. I apologize in advance if this has already been spoken of, but the question of the electrical characteristics remaining substantially unchanged for the repowering, has that been defined, or is it a little more explanation about that, what the characteristics?
Yeah, so we have. I guess in later topics, Dan, we'll have a little bit more discussion of the electrical characteristics when a project is converting from one technology to another technology. I would say that those electrical characteristics are not specifically defined, but determined based on the study and the evaluation of the request and the overall big picture at the time that request is being studied or evaluated. By the participating transmission owner.
Okay, yeah, because that same phrasing was used in the modifications as well as the repowering, so I was just looking for a little help on that one. Okay, thank you very much, Jason.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Dan. All right, any other questions?
I do not see any additional questions in queue. And as a reminder, if you're
Great.
on the phone, pressing #2 will get you into the question queue.
All right, I'm going to keep going. All right, the Repower study plan timeline. The Kaiso's original proposal was to remove the 10-day requirement to tender a draft study plan to the customer following the submittal and review of the IR interconnection request package. I don't think anybody disagrees that the 10 days is an unreasonable timeline, and there was a number of customers that suggested implementing a longer term or a longer period of time for the Kaiso and PTO to respond and tender that study plan. But many stakeholders suggested that the Kaiso not be unbound from that timeline, and so therefore we did readjust our proposal to instead of removing the 10 days, to shift that 10 days to a 30 calendar day requirement to tender the study plan from the date that the interconnection request is deemed valid. So effectively, we'll go through the process of validating the IR and the technical data. The Kaiso will deem it valid with the interconnection customer, and then the 30 calendar days will start from there for the PTO, the participating transmission owner, and the Kaiso to develop and tender that draft study plan to the customer. And then as far as specific tariff language, we did propose an edit to section 25.1.2.3 to state the same as I just spoke of. I'll pause there for any questions.
All right. I do not see any questions in queue.
All right, great. Thanks, Michelle. Keep moving here. And then just a little bit more general tariff section 25 repower language clarifications. I won't go into too much details here, but generally the section 25 of the tariff applies to facilities seeking to interconnect into the Kaiso queue, modify its projects, or repower its project. And the Kaiso is proposing to clarify some specific language around repowers. Stakeholder comments were supportive of this change. And then to be specific, as identified in the paper, we're adding a section F to section 25.1 just to clarify the repower, and then adding some clarification to section 25.1.2 to reference that section F. Any questions or comments on this?
I do not see any questions or comments in queue.
Perfect. Keep moving. All right. So projects aligning their COD, or commercial operation date, with a power purchase agreement. And this topic is specific to TP Deliverability Allocation Group 3 projects that have sought and received an allocation by proceeding through that Group 3 request. One of the limitations that Group 3 projects has is that they may not extend their COD beyond the date that was proposed in their original interconnection request. And customers have come back to us and said, hey, if we receive an allocation via Group 3 and we subsequently acquire a power purchase agreement that has a COD, or commercial operation date, that is different than our interconnection request, could we be allowed to align our COD with that PPA? And the Kaiso the Kaiso has agreed that yes, if you have a commercial status that has changed and has put the project in a better position commercially to come online and achieve COD, and that we would allow that adjustment of the COD to be in line with that power purchase agreement. Stakeholders generally agreed and supported that. SCE did ask for clarification that an MMA review would be required for this COD adjustment, and then LSA and CS support, but suggest that groups 1 and 2 also have that same alignment. So I do want to clarify and just mention and comment to those. So any in-service synchronization or commercial operation date milestone changes or requests do require an MMA. So the answer is yes, an MMA would be required to make this COD adjustment to align with the PPA. And then second to that is currently Group 3 projects are the only allocation groups that have a restriction on adjusting their or any of their milestone dates. And Groups 1 and 2 already are provided that alignment. So there's really no adjustment here for Groups 1 and 2 because they are already, I guess, allowed to modify their COD or milestones via a material modification request. And as noted in the draft final proposal, we're adding a sentence to clarify this policy in section 8.9.2.2 of Appendix DD. And I'll pause there. I see Susan and Alan both have their hands raised.
We have a couple of questions in queue.
Yeah, hi,
All
Susan
right.
Schneider.
Susan, your line is unmuted.
Thank you, Susan Schneider, Phoenix Consulting. I had just one or two questions or clarifying questions. I think that the language in, and I don't recall if it was the tariff or the BPM, talks about the ability for projects to, I think it's automatically have this ability to adjust their COD to reflect their GIA COD to reflect a PPA COD. So even though it has that kind of language, it still requires an MMA request even today? That's
correct. The PTOs and Kaiso would need to review that adjustment to ensure that there's no impacts on either the current project or other projects in either the same queue or point of interconnection area. Okay, because the existing language doesn't say that. It simply says that they're allowed to adjust. So it doesn't, if there's a assessment involved or something like that, I think that that would be in addition to what's there currently. So I guess I would, I request that you go back and look and see, because it doesn't really imply, there's nothing implied there about having to do an assessment. I think it just says you're allowed to do it. And so that's why this is a little confusing to me to see that there's an MMA required rather than just a notification. So I think the tariff is not necessarily consistent with this this requirement. So I LSA, speaking for LSA, we do know that groups 1 and 2 have the same COD alignment. So I don't think our comments actually said that, but we're happy to keep it where it is. Okay, great. Yeah, maybe there was a misinterpretation there. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification, Susan. All right, thanks. Okay. Thank you.
All right, we are moving to the next caller in queue. Alan, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Alan Combs. I wanted to ask how this will, for my clients, we're supportive of this proposal, but how this will work with the annual affidavits. Group 3 projects that have, by definition, have deliverability, well, or if they're in this situation, they have deliverability, they file an affidavit to retain deliverability. If they want to push out their COD to align with the PPA as this proposes, do they need to have that done in advance of the affidavit if they're coming up on a year where their affidavit would show that they're not aligned on their COD within their executed GIA? Basically, you do need to do this MMA before the affidavit is due.
Yeah, so I think I have a couple comments there, right? I would say that I think first off, a project can only seek a TPD allocation in Group 3 immediately following the Phase 2 study. And if a project does not receive an allocation on that, it may park for a first year and seek an allocation in Group 3 in the second year. But in the event that it doesn't receive an allocation or doesn't accept the allocation following that initial request, a project may not seek in Group 3 in any later or subsequent TPD allocation requests or seeking TPD allocation requests. It would then fall into one of the other groups that are applicable. So I'm not sure how a future alignment would align or be applicable to any Group 3 request.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't being clear enough. I'm talking about the retained deliverability affidavit. So I'm talking about a Group 3 project that has received deliverability.
Okay.
But they're in a year where they need to push out their COD, otherwise their LGIA is, well, they may, let's say they're in a situation where they would otherwise have to indicate that they can achieve their COD, which I don't know if that comes up in the affidavit, but basically if they were going to initiate an MMA to adjust the COD because they have an offtake agreement that, they want to align with the offtake agreement's milestones, do they need to get that started before the affidavit is due in a year where there otherwise might be a conflict, or do they need to have it completed?
Yeah, I think some of this is going to fall on a case-by-case basis. Generally speaking, though, I would say if a project acquires a PPA and has received an allocation under Group 3, that an MMA should be submitted immediately following the execution of that PPA to realign itself with the two pieces of the puzzle, if you will, right? In the event that that happens before the affidavit, and you're then submitting a retention affidavit, it'd be important then to tie the MMA request to that retention affidavit to show that the intent here is to align everything and that things are being adjusted. And then we would evaluate that internally on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know that we have a yes or no answer to that, but certainly we would take that into consideration through both processes, if you will.
And this is probably clear in the proposal, but once you need to show a PPA, do other aspects of commercial viability demonstration come into play, like having a permit or having filed a permit? There are other criteria. Think of the other criteria for extending COD for non-Group 3, but or is it really just you just need to align it on the PPA and keep moving forward?
Yeah, I would kind of just generally say that any other criteria applicable to retaining TP deliverability is still going to be applicable. The only thing we're adjusting and aligning here is the COD dates relative to the PPA.
All right. Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Alan.
And we're moving to the final question in queue. Caller, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is Rayanne Quadro from Gridwell Consulting on behalf of EDF Renewables today. I just wanted to tease out a little bit the conversation about the automatic COD extensions. My understanding is in alignment with Susan that COD extension specifically did not require an MMA and the deposit that goes along with it, but the extension of the in-service date or other Appendix B milestones might require that MMA. So in a situation where a project had commercial operations for markets, phasing, or multiple PPAs, and the in-service date was not affected, only that final COD date, a request could be submitted to the ISO. The COD could get moved out. Of course, the ISO and PTO would look at it, but it wouldn't require that $10,000 study deposit versus a request to move out other Appendix B milestones would. And I only provide that level of detail here thinking that it might be worthy in the BPM to outline some use case examples so that that's perfectly clear if that is indeed the policy.
Thank you, Rayanne, for that clarification. Certainly something that we'll go back and look at and consider. Can you provide also some of that examples and comments in the written so that we can be specific in what we're looking at and reviewing?
Certainly. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Rayanne, for the feedback.
All right, that was the final question in queue.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Keep going here. Just a note, Alan and Rayanne, you still have your hands raised. Just want to make sure that there weren't any further questions there. All right, and then continuing on the topic of modifications, the first modification topic is allowing projects to convert to full storage. Currently, generating facilities are prohibited from completely converting from one technology to a battery storage. Allowing projects to convert to storage using the proposal is allowing projects to convert to storage using a material modification or post-COD modification or the repower process, provided that the changes meet the requirements of the MMA or repower request. And the specific details there are that the electrical characteristics of the plant remain substantially unchanged from the original generating facility. And a number of stakeholders did provide their support for this topic. And the Kaiso just wanted to clarify and be specific here that, for asynchronous facilities converting to storage, all projects would be permitted to use the MMA post-COD or repower process. And then for synchronous projects, we just wanted to clarify that there is potentially a higher likelihood that the electrical characteristics may be deemed too impactful for that such conversion. And if the MMA or post-COD or repower study process identified that the electrical characteristic impact is too significant, that it would require a full study process, and that could be the Q cluster study process or the independent study process if that was applicable. So we're certainly willing to review those synchronous conversions. We just want to make sure that we're clear in what the results may look like. Specific tariff language would include updates to section 6.7.2.5 of Appendix DD. I'll pause there. Looks like Susan has a question.
Yep. Susan, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Susan Schneider, Phoenix Consulting again. My question is for the synchronous to asynchronous conversion, is the concern there because you're adding inverters? There may be some short circuit duty issues. Is that the issue there?
I think that's the primary electrical impact, that we're concerned of.
Okay, so if a project were to, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, you more generally, and you have a spinning machine that can manage a lot of the electrical characteristics to a asynchronous machine that is not spinning and has different electrical characteristics on the grid as well. So some of that might be short circuit duty as well. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay. If a project were to come in as part of its request to, add capacitors or whatever, I'm not an engineer, so I apologize. That's a stupid non-engineering example, or from a person. But if a project were to come in understanding that these could be issues and including mitigation in its request, is that something that the Kaiso would take into account in assessing the request?
I think it would certainly be a factor in the evaluation based on the interconnection request and the details of the, of the request in general, right? So again, a case-by-case basis, right? If a project is proposing and can, I suppose if a project can mitigate some of the concerns, then we would evaluate that accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
And it looks like we do have a couple more questions in queue. Caller, go ahead. Your line is unmuted. Songjay, you can go ahead. Your line is unmuted.
Oh, okay. Songjay Chu from Great Bright. So the question is for some, for example, an old synchronous generator converting to storage. Let's say it passed the insignificant characteristic test. But then due to the old difference between the old technology and the new technology, for example, now we need a CRS. So all the old RAS facilities cannot be used. They must be removed and upgraded. Some of those elements are network upgrades. So for MMA, is there any cost cap, maximum cost responsibility protection, or it can change anytime whenever the PTO performs updates, the cost can go up?
Yeah, certainly. So in the event that new upgrades are identified for a project, it's my understanding that the cost caps could increase based on the request and the requirements of that new request.
So basically, there isn't any cost cap for M&A, for converting fully to storage through M&A.
Boy, that's a very pointed question.
I would say that.
But I think that's correct. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have another question in queue. Alan, your line is unmuted. You may go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Alan Combs. So in the actual specific language, you do show what you propose to change to Appendix D for this storage topic. But to me, the prohibition on 100% conversion to 100% storage was really more in the BPM. I mean, I see the addition to the tariff here, but it was really the language in the BPM that was more of the restriction. So I gather you have that listed there but is there a reason why you can't show the BPM proposed changes now along with the tariff changes? I understand there's different timelines for approval, but it seems like in terms of explaining how you're going to implement this, it'd be nice to see what the BPM change is going to be.
Sure. So we generally wanted to focus on the tariff language here because that requires the stakeholder process and the proposals and then the stakeholder meetings and comment periods. The BPM change management process is, as you know, a different process, and we can evaluate the proposed changes that are consistent with what we're proposing in the tariff through that BPM change management process. So yeah, we didn't want to bring in the BPM language into a tariff-driven initiative, I suppose, right? Let's allow the BPM process to update that language.
Okay. I mean, it's not this. Well, I'm sure you apply that in other places, but it makes it a little harder here. But thank you for the clarification. I'll take my hand down.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Appreciate the feedback.
All right. Don't see any other questions in queue.
All right, great. I'll keep going here. So there's two other modification topics, both related to Appendix U. Really here, the intent of both Appendix U topics is to align the language and provisions to the current situation that we're in with Appendix DD. The first topic is to align the serial process to be consistent with modification procedures by deleting Section 4.4.4 of Appendix U. EDF and SCE provided their support for this. Pretty straightforward here. Our proposal is to delete Section 4.4.4. And then I'm going to review the other Appendix U, and then I can take questions for both topics here. A little more specific on the restudy timeline identified in Appendix U. Really the bottom line is these studies are now performed in the cluster phase 1 and phase 2 studies, as well as the annual reassessment. And so the Kaiso is proposing to delete Section 6.4 and 7.6. Want to retain Section 8.5 as it's still required for FERC settlement agreements. We, again, got EDF renewables as well as SCE provided their support, and the deletion is 6.4 and 7.6 of Appendix U. We'll pause there for Appendix U questions. All right, hearing none.
I don't see any questions in queue.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. And the last topic of the day is the generator interconnection study process agreement specific to the effective date. So currently the study process agreement is effective upon the submission to the Kaiso, and the process that was implemented a few years ago introduces a situation where the Kaiso is reviewing the interconnection request application package and deeming it complete before the validation analysis begins. And so the Kaiso is proposing to change the effective date from submission to the day the interconnection request package is deemed complete. So I think, yeah, here we provided the specific change to to section 3.5.1 and the generator interconnection agreement as well. Any questions here?
There are currently no questions in queue.
Great, thanks, Michelle. And then Isabella, I'll toss it back your way to go through the last few items and slides. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jason. And Michelle, if you could pass me back presenting rights, that would be great. So, as mentioned earlier in today's call, we will be accepting comments until October 21st. The comment template is available out on the initiative webpage. We've linked to the initiative webpage here on this slide for you. You can go in and submit your comments anytime between now and the 21st. And again, we encourage you to submit your comments on both the draft final proposal and the draft tariff language. And then if you have any questions, you can reach out to Jason at jlfoster@kaiso.com. You can also send an email to ISO Stakeholder Affairs at kaiso.com. A few other things before we wrap up. The ISO did recently launch its Energy Matters blog, and this blog provides timely insights into the ISO grid and market operations, as well as some other industry-related news. Here we've highlighted one of our recent blog posts. It's developing an extended day-ahead market framework. We've linked this image here on the slide for you as well if you want to check it out. You can also subscribe to the Energy Matters blog monthly summary, and so we've included a link on this slide here to take you to the subscription page if you're interested. And then along those lines, the ISO is hosting a virtual event it's going to be the Extended Day Ahead Market Forum. It's completely free to attend. It'll be on October 13th from 8:30 to 11:30 a.m. And really the goal of this forum will be to foster a regional discussion driven by the transformational changes and opportunities developing in the West. During the forum, it'll provide industry leaders and utility representatives, policy makers, and stakeholders with the opportunity to share their perspectives on some of the key concepts and principles that are critical to the development of an EDM framework. And we'll have some panel discussions as well. If you are interested in attending, I encourage you to register. Registration will remain open until October 12th. You can register by visiting the Extended Day Ahead Market Forum webpage on the ISO website, which is linked here on this slide. And again, registration will be open until October 12th. But if you have any questions on the virtual event, you can send those to ISO Stakeholder Affairs at Kaiso.com. So I'll open it up here to see if we have any last questions before we conclude.
All right. I do not see any questions in the queue, Isabella.
Okay. All right. Well, if there are no further questions, that concludes today's stakeholder call. Thank you all very much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.